All right, what's going on, everybody? I know this is a little bit unusual. I usually don't make videos like this, but I did come across something I wanted to talk about just for a bit. This is in reference to Edge Online had recently done a feature on F-Zero GX producer Toshihiro Nagashi, sorry. Um, in an interview, he was talking about a couple of different games that he had worked on. They were outlining his career so far. Um, and something kind of stood out to me. I'll link all this information in the description below. But this particular segment was in regards to F-Zero GX specifically, and he's talking about even though we had lost the war in the hardware market, him working at Sega, I wanted Nintendo to see how great Sega was as a company. We made a lot of characters, a lot of courses, and we did the best that we could for the graphics using the best technology at the time. And even though we tried really hard making games for Sega hardware, they never really sold too well. But F-Zero sold over 1.5 million copies worldwide. So I thought that was relatively interesting, since most of the numbers that we get, like for example, VG Charts, I do believe currently has GX selling 650,000 copies worldwide. But the producer is saying that GX sold over 1.5 million units, which kind of got me thinking about some things. Primarily the lack of any F-Zero for the last 15 years, the decade and a half. The series has been dormant longer than it's been alive at this point. A couple of things it made me think about. There was an article done by Go Nintendo who covered an interview with Source Gaming. I believe his name was Giles Godfrey. Also one of the devs at GX, worked on GX back on the GameCube. He says that it was really expensive to work on to produce the GX on the GameCube, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I guess given everything that happened, you had a console release and then you had an arcade release, and there were a couple different versions of the arcade unit. And I'm not sure that a lot of people are aware of. You had your basic arcade cabinet, but then you had an AX Monster Ride, where it was kind of like some people would find at an amusement park. You get in the cockpit and it would move and gyrate and vibrate and all this other stuff. So I can understand how the production on this particular game would be relatively expensive. He doesn't state that it was the whole project. He just says that F-Zero GX was an expensive project, which I guess at the time is something that I can understand. And in another article, Miyamoto was interviewed by Entertainment Weekly, and he had mentioned they'd asked him, "You had great success in your ability to predict what players would find fun to play. Have there been any games you thought would be fun but didn't turn out that way?" And his response was, "Yes, that definitely has happened. In the past, we've worked with some outside development houses on titles like F-Zero and Star Fox, and let me just say, we were disappointed with the results. So much got very excited about the idea of those games, but the games themselves did not deliver." I'm not exactly sure what he was expecting here. Just given the history, most of this information can be found on VG Charts. F-Zero, the very first one, the SNES version, sold just under 3 million at 2.85 copies, and this is as of December 14. F-Zero X came out, which was released back in 98. They sold 1.10 million units. And then Maximum Velocity, which was a launch title on the Game Boy Advance in 2001, sold at 1.05 million units. And GP Legend, as we know, on the Game Boy Advance as well, is probably the lowest selling one that we have data on at 160,000 copies sold worldwide. And then GX, with this new information provided by Nagashi, is currently at 1.5 as opposed to the old 650,000. So it kind of, I'm a little bit confused. I understand it's not Mario Kart numbers, but I mean, 1.5 million units is nothing to scoff at, which kind of has me wondering how much did the AXGX project cost to make? Because I do believe at one point they were planning on making a Game Boy Advance counterpart as well, but the team didn't know how to program for the Game Boy Advance, so they just stuck to the GameCube and the arcade version. So I guess my thought process is, if money is an issue, I kind of wish they would just say that, well, the F-Zero series has never sold as well as games like Mario Kart. So that's why we haven't seen anything. because they've come out on record saying a couple different things which didn't really sit right with me. Primarily, well, if we have a good control scheme or something like that, I'll link that article in the description as well. Along the lines, me and Marlon said that we don't have the controller for it, which I think is kind of baloney because yes, the GameCube had analog triggers, but X on the N64 did not. The Z trigger and the R trigger were all digital. The Wii U gamepad, the Wii U Pro controller, and all the classic controller components were all digital as well, so they could easily make that work. The Switch, again, has digital buttons, which really isn't that much of a deal breaker, especially for a game like F-Zero. I don't really think that it makes that big a difference to have analog versus digital triggers here. They also made mention if we had a new idea, then they could probably turn F-Zero into a great game again, which I also think is kind of hooey as well, simply because you have games like the new Super Mario Bros. Series, which remained unchanged since its conception, and yet they made 4 or 5 of those games. Not to say that those games weren't good, but I just feel like there was nothing really new about New Super Mario Bros. They made a lot of money, is what it worked out to be. I think the New Super Mario Bros. Wii sold like 28 million units. Don't quote me on that, but I remember it selling something ridiculous like that. So yeah, F-Zero has never been like a blockbuster game, but it didn't need to be. I understand that it's a niche franchise for a niche genre, but the numbers speak for themselves. It never sold poorly, save for the Japanese-only version, the Climax. There was a video by Freelance Nintendo. He did a video on the state of F-Zero, and I do believe he said in the first 3 days it sold less than 5,800 units, and that was in Japan only, so we can kind of assume that it did worse than GP Legend at 160,000 units worldwide. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. I hope you can forgive me. I'm not at home right now. I'm on the road driving. I'm super tired, but I happened to see this. I posted about it on Twitter. I'll link all the relevant news articles and below so you guys can check it out for yourself. And let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time.